Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for STEM professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about the course, please visit teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Jessica Santana is a force to be reckoned with, an entrepreneur, technologist, writer, and philanthropist. She's the co-founder of NYOT Tech, an organization whose goal is to provide mentorship and preparation of students for careers in technology. Welcome, Jessica. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me today.
Oh, yes, I'm doing great. Well, first question. So I did a bit of research on you. So it looks like your degree, at least, is in accounting, but you're doing all this work in technology. So where did all this interest in technology come from?
Yeah, so quick correction. So my undergraduate degree is in accounting. My master's degree is in information technology.
Okay.
But I think I got my start in technology back in high school, with the introduction of things like MySpace and the customization of MySpace page layouts. I was learning HTML and CSS really early on. So I caught this really big interest in wanting to understand more about these different languages. And so as time passed, I was teaching a lot of programming languages to myself while I was in college. And then ultimately it became a side hustle for me when I was in college. So I was doing a lot of freelance technology consulting work, not ever even knowing that there was a career for me in the industry. So that's how I found myself in it, was honestly by just being online. And I do credit MySpace to my start. Obviously, technology has very much evolved since then, but that was my introduction to it. And ultimately, I started my career after graduate school in technology, working as a tech consultant for federal agencies and financial services organizations in New York City and Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, did you ever work in accounting?
No, I did a lot of internships in accounting, but I never worked in accounting.
Okay, well, okay, interesting. Yeah, because I was kind of curious, and you got this degree in accounting. Where did this whole technology business come in? But thank you for kind of explaining. So it started with MySpace, I see. So
Yeah.
You go way back with technology. All right, cool. So, I mentioned in the intro that you're the co-founder of NYOT Tech. So where'd the motivation to even start this organization come from? And not only that, but what process did you use to get it off the ground?
Yeah, so NYOT Tech, what we are is a nonprofit organization that's providing technology education opportunities to low-income students in New York City, who are attending high schools where there's a high concentration of families who are living in poverty. So our students, they're coming from low-income backgrounds, but they're super talented and super excited to learn about tech. And in terms of how the idea came about, my co-founder and I, we were the first in our families to graduate with a degree in technology and then go off and start careers in the actual industry. And then when we started our careers in industry, we realized, well, where we are at now versus where we were when we were in high school were two completely different places. And I think when we think about the communities that we're from, we're thinking that there's such a disconnect between industry and communities and education that if we don't start preparing young people for the opportunities of not tomorrow, but of today, they can be severely left behind. So it was just an idea that came out, drafted up on Starbucks napkins back in 2014, and it grew into being an actual organization. It started out as just a passion project, and then we ended up getting a seed grant from an investor that allowed us to take the work full time. But we really started small with just 20 students in 2014, and now we're working with 500 students across all the 5 boroughs of New York City.
Oh, wow. So with this program, so I'm just trying to envision what it is. So it's students, do they come to a location, or do your people go to the schools? How does that work?
Yeah, so the way our program works is we have 2 programs at the high school level. We do have our college program, but we have 2 programs at the high school level. One is a semester-long course called Tech 360, where the students are learning front-end web development from engineering, like real engineering talent from the companies that we're working with. So we recruit students in an out of school time program. They come to our partner sites and then they learn from the engineers themselves, who then deliver the curriculum to the students who are enrolled in the programs. And then we have a high school program as well that is a 9-month course called Tech Flex Leaders, where it's the same exact model taught by engineers on a volunteer basis in an out of school time fashion, embedded at a company. But then after the students graduate from that course, we place them into paid internships with our corporate partners. So we do have students who have done internship with Deutsche Bank, have done internship with smaller startups like PureWow, which was recently acquired by VaynerMedia. And so all with the goal of making sure that we're giving them the tools and the access they need to be successful, even before they go into the industry, and then also even before they decide whether or not they want to pursue a degree in technology in the future.
Oh, wow. So these engineers that are volunteering with you, these are actual working engineers, or are they engineering students?
No, these are actual engineers, like engineers from really top companies like Google, Facebook, smaller startups as well. And so these are real engineers who are teaching the classes.
Okay. So you mentioned two programs. One is a 1-month program, one is a 9-month program. Is that an everyday kind of thing, or is it an every other day? How often do you meet with the student, or the engineers meet with the students?
Yeah, so it's not a 1-month program. The first program is semester long. So
Semester,
it's
pardon me.
actually 3 months long. And essentially the students who are enrolled in each of the courses, they're meeting once a week, depending on the program, between 3 to 4 hours a week in person. And then they take home projects that they work on, which equate to about 2 to 3 hours of homework, for a lack of a better word.
Okay. And the students that are a member or participate in this program, is there some sort of application process that they need to go through to get into the program?
Yeah, sure. So from the students from all of our school partners, they actually apply to be a part of New York on Tech. It's really important for us to work with students who actually want to learn the content and will self-select into the program. And so, yes, they follow an application process, which is just an online process that expresses their interest, helps us collect basic demographic information for the entry level, for the introductory program. And then for the second program, there is an interview process where we're trying to gauge whether or not this is a student who already has some level of technical expertise, where we are more of not an exposure program for them, but an actual talent accelerator.
Oh, okay. So the students that, well, you mentioned that for at least for the second program, there's an interview process. Is that the only, I guess, criterion that you use to select, or do you use other factors that you use to determine who gets into the program?
Well, no, our students have to come from our partner schools. We work with 50 of them in New York City. So they have to come from our partner schools,
Okay.
and they have to identify with an underrepresented racial ethnic minority group. And they also have to be eligible for free lunch at their schools.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Oh, interesting. So if a student is not a member of one of those 50 partner schools, is there a way that they can still participate, or could they petition their school to become a member of the 50 partner schools?
Yeah, so as of right now, we only work with those 50 schools, but a student and a family member can petition. I will also say that there are schools who reach out to us who want to be a part of the program. It's just more of a matter of, making the connection. But it's important for us to have that school buy-in so that we know how the students are even performing in the program outside of, the walls that we work with them in.
Okay, and the schools that are currently members, I'm guessing are they solely public schools?
No, they're public and charter.
Private and charter. Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm guessing if you're going to a private school, you're doing all right. So maybe you don't need the program. Is that, I'm guessing, the rationale?
Well, yes and no. I think private schools also need access to technology education. It's a really new and evolving field. So I wouldn't say that private school students don't need the service. I just think for us, with the way that where we want to make our impact the most is within the public and charter school sector. But I'm sure that there has to be organizations that are working solely with private schools to bring this kind of education into the classroom as well.
And your program, is it solely in New York City, or is it New York State?
Yeah, no, our program is solely in New York City right now.
Okay. Is there any plans to eventually take it nationally?
Maybe, we'll see.
Okay. Well, it certainly sounds like a program that kids outside of New York City can benefit from. So hopefully that's part of your future plans. Doing some of the from background work just to find out who you were. I noticed. I watched your TED Talk, and I was really impressed by it. How did that come about?
Thank you. So someone reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to apply to be a TEDx speaker. And I went ahead and said, sure, absolutely. It was an education themed TEDx event. And I thought that, my presence there and what I had to say would actually be relevant to the audience. And so they sent me an application. I filled out the application, and then once accepted, had to follow, a certain set of guidelines to make sure that the TEDx talk was good, sound, and then ready to be performed on the live stage.
Okay, and the TED Talk that you did, just for the people that are listening, what was it about?
It's about how our technology geniuses can come from any and everywhere. I think that we're in a unique time right now where we have created a lot of barriers to access for marginalized communities to actually realize their potential in these 21st century jobs. And I think a lot of times when you think about talent and where you recruit from or where you think you can actually find it, people in public schools or students who are living in communities that have been historically disenfranchised have historically been left out of that conversation. And so part of the TEDx talk was giving my own personal story of how I got into technology, but then relating that back to the larger issue at hand, which is students are not being given the opportunities they need to excel, and we should be, they need to excel, and then we need to be thinking critically about how we create pathways for everyone, because our next tech geniuses are sitting in our classrooms.
For sure. And the TED Talk that you've given, well, obviously that's available. Anyone can go look at that at YouTube. Do you do talks on the similar topic or other topics with other audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. If I had to quantify, I'd probably speak on panels or give talks in a solo fashion about once a month. Once or twice a month, I would say. And so, like, for example, last year I did a total of 25 different talks in 2017.
Oh, wow. And I'm guessing that from the result of those talks would be people becoming more interested, or the school board or schools becoming more interested in New York on tech?
Yeah, schools, partners, volunteers, companies. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, great. So, that's definitely a way to get your name out there, to show yourself as an expert, for sure. And, because you've given so many talks, and you mentioned you gave so many in 2017, do you have any tips on effective public speaking?
Absolutely. I think when you're going to engage in a public speaking engagement, I think it's really important to understand who the audience is. Certain stories and certain messages are going to resonate with a certain population of people. And so when you're able to identify who you're talking to, I think it will allow you to more effectively deliver the kind of messaging that you want. So I think that's number one. I think number two is realizing that people who are coming to events or are coming to see you talk, they're not necessarily coming to hear about you. I think it's really important to give people actionable steps that they can follow during your talk or even after your talk, to give them a framework of the kind of advice and the kind of pieces of information that you're asking them, or the kind of change you're asking them to implement within their organizations or in their life. If it's a more motivational talk, I think providing actionable steps is important to audiences, because they want to feel like they got value out of what you're saying. And I think the last thing is realizing that people are not always going to remember what you say in your talk, but they are going to remember how you make them feel during your talk. And so the more ways that you can engage by asking audience questions, or asking them to read certain things off your slide, or bringing in some humor into the actual presentation, I think is important in order to deliver an effective message. So I think those are the three things that I would say I learned in the process of speaking over the last couple of years.
Okay, yeah. That last point you brought up is people might not remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I think that's true. And to be very honest, that notion kind of is, what's the best way to say this? It's kind of upsetting, to be very honest, when I think about it, because you know, as a person that speaks, you know, as often as you do, you put a lot of time and effort into making sure that you're putting across a particular message, and then for the end result to be, well, I felt good. If the person in the audience, well, I felt great. She did a great job making me feel good. Okay, well, what's next? I don't know, but I feel good though. But, you know, it's definitely something like whenever someone is done listening to a speech, you'd hope that there be some sort of take home message for them to do, as opposed to just I feel good. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I think it's also like what you're trying to accomplish as a speaker. You know, I think a lot of times people, you know, whether it's a paid speaking engagement or it's like you actually using the speaking engagement for a business development opportunity, you weigh whether or not you got what you wanted from it. Like, for example, when I'm called to speak and I'm actually getting honorarium for it, and it's not so much about me being able to like use it as leverage for what I'm trying to do bigger and better for New York on Tech. I think, you know, my sole job that day was to deliver on that content and to make sure that like I promised to my client at that point what it was that I had to deliver, right? And so I think that when I come into the frame of mind of like, what was the actual goal for this presentation, it's not so much about like how I made them feel, but whether or not I actually pleased the client in that process and making sure that I hit all of what they wanted me to do. Now, if I'm speaking pro bono because I see it as an important audience and I really want to get my message across about New York on Tech to a potential group of people who can help me in the future, then I know for a fact that like maybe my metric for success for that engagement is not necessarily like how I made them feel, but how I actually like created the value proposition for New York on Tech and whether or not they got it. So I think for people who are creatives and who are artists and who are engaging in speaking engagements, I think it's just important to know like what you actually want to get out of it, because it's not so much always about like what the audience wants to get out of it. I think audiences are super important, but I also think that like you should be a little bit selfish in the process as well and like ask yourself, well, what do I want to get out of this and how am I going to measure my own success outside of how the audience is measuring mine? Does that make sense?
You're damn right. You got to get something out of it. You know, you're not just up on the stage just giving stuff. You need to get stuff back too. I mean, I think life is all about reciprocity. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's selfish at all. I mean, it's human nature. We're not Mother Teresa. We're not Jesus. We need stuff too. And I think you're absolutely right there. So another question I had, it had to do with a process. Do you have a process for coming up with your presentations? I'm a lazy person. I don't like to start from scratch if I don't have to. So I try to develop a process to basically give every speech or to prepare and deliver every speech that I have to give. So I'm not starting from scratch every time. Do you have a process? And if you do, what is it?
Yeah. So I actually don't have a process. I do start from scratch a lot of times, unless it's a talk that I've already given. I think that one thing I will always ask for is just questions in advance. Like it depends on the kind of engagement. Like if I'm doing an interview and it's like a fireside chat, I'll just ask for the questions in advance and make sure that I come prepared. If it's a keynote that I've delivered in the past and it's just revisiting what I said in past keynotes to make sure that I'm not always looking at the paper to keep myself fresh on the content. However, there have been times like with the TEDx talk where it was just like I had no content for that. I think I tell like because it was such a personal talk and it was so lengthy and I was there for a longer period of time than what I am usually on stage for talks. I felt like that process was a lot more intense than what I had anticipated. But what I will say is like, I've referenced a lot of other people's talks on YouTube and I was just like, well, how did they formulate it? And what was it, that was effective about their talks, and more took notes about what I thought they did really, really well and incorporated into mine. But I wouldn't say that I have yet mastered like a methodology for it. I think that my biggest question before going into, creating the content or creating what I'm going to say for a speech is, just asking like who the audience is. And I think that that is the most important question, is the one that actually drives what I want to say. But I wouldn't say that I'm like, I have like a scientific methodology behind it.
Maybe it comes back to just my own background working in medical device as an engineer. When you're developing medical devices, you have to follow a process. It's not even a want to follow. It's the law, actually. If you don't follow the process, then you can get in trouble with the FDA, or criminally charged even if something really catastrophic happens with your medical device. So that's probably where it comes from for me, just from my own background. But when I watched your TED Talk, I thought you did a really great job of telling a story. I mean, when I look at those kind when I listen to any kind of speech, the ones that really kind of stay with me are the ones where someone actually tells a story, and it's not just a story, but one that's easy to follow. Sometimes people can be all over the place with tangents and just things that don't naturally or logically flow together. But your talk was very engaging. I actually watched the entirety of it, so that's actually a big deal for me, since I often switch off from things, especially on YouTube. So I thought you did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So is there anything else that you'd like people to know about what you're currently doing?
Yeah, just be on the lookout. If you're a company that's really interested in figuring out how you can engage with your community, then reach out. If you're a volunteer looking for a way to give back meaningfully to the community, then reach out. If you're a parent who is interested in learning about how to get your children into technology, then reach out. We're always open and welcoming of any questions. And I think lastly, I know this is Teach the Geek to Speak. If I could give any advice to anyone who is looking to just start building a portfolio of speaking engagements, I would say you have to just start somewhere. You're not always going to get that really big stage in the beginning, but that really small stage with a group of 20 people will eventually become the stage where you're speaking at, where it's 1,000 people in the audience. And so I would say build up your portfolio, say yes to things, make sure that you're keeping an open mind, and then also start tracking the kinds of things people are tapping you to speak about, because once you start tracking that, you'll start seeing themes about what people perceive your brand to be, and you might be able to create already made content that you're able to leverage and then take it to multiple audiences who might be interested in listening to it all the same. So that's what I want to say.
Excellent. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yes, they can contact me at jessicasantana.com, and I am at Jess Worldwide on Instagram and Twitter.
Excellent. Well, thank you for speaking with me, Jessica. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, everybody, this is the end of the interview. Again, my name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for STEM professionals. The first offering is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about the course and me, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, please take care.